welcome to the Natural View. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I'm the content director of Whole Foods Magazine, and I'm here with my co-host, Todd Paula of 24 Stories Marketing. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Maggie, how are you?
I'm good. And today our special guest is Dr. Darrin Starkey. He is the Director of Education at Trace, and he's been a board-certified naturopathic physician since the year 2000. And today he's going to talk to us about a really important mineral topic that we all need to make sure we're staying on top of, and that is magnesium. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here. So I want to just start kind of at the beginning and discuss the importance of magnesium and how it supports wellness, particularly stress, anxiety, and kind of the benefits that it offers.
Great question, Maggie. I think that when we start looking at the statistics right now, when we start hearing numbers like 80% of our society is deemed deficient in magnesium, I think that is a pretty big light that we need to be, getting out there to all consumers. And I think that oftentimes with that number 80, even though it's a huge number, I think that specifically focuses on the aging population in our youth, not so much as our middle-aged, but at the same time, magnesium, we talk about deficiencies, anything that, in my opinion, everything starts in the soil. That's what Trace is about, right? The whole premise of Trace and its history is that we're only as healthy as our soil is fertile. And with that being said, when we start looking at what our foods offer with these analytical analysis as to what we find even 50 years ago, and the deficiency in those foods as compared to what we're eating today. So I think that, when it comes down to these concerns, and I think that some of them are quite critical, especially when it comes to mental health, anxiety, depressions, magnesium should be at the top of, that's the tranquil element. That's the calming element. But I think it's interesting how magnesium works. Magnesium not only is a tranquil element, but it's also an energy, producer. So, where we need it, typically that's why so many people take it at bedtime, because it helps calm the mind, calm the body, help us sleep. But it's just as important in the morning to help keep that energy level, keep our thoughts, so oftentimes when it comes to deficiency, one indicator that typically has our attention is muscle cramps. Now, when we start seeing, little tiny twitches in our noses or corner of our eyes, I think that's a great, it's kind of like our engine light on our dashboards of our cars. Todd, when you have an engine light that comes on your dashboard, what do you do as soon as that light comes on?
I'm getting better. I used to ignore it for months and months, but now, as I get older, it worries me.
That's my point. That is thank you. That is perfect. In the fact that typically we, depending on type of car, right? Typically, I think we treat our cars better than we do ourselves. We spend more money sometimes on our cars than we do ourselves. So when that engine light comes on, we know, we're aware, we take it into the garage, we get it fixed. But Todd hit the perfect, hit it out of the park when he says that typically when an engine light on our personal dashboards goes on, only we know, right? We identify what's not quite right, but we typically kind of push it aside and neglect it for months, years, until we can't. And I think that's where in our society, we're such a reactive society. Instead of being proactive, I think that with magnesium, we have to be, instead of being reactive, we definitely have to be proactive.
Yeah, it's fascinating as you talk about, I guess, let me back up for a second. Historically, I always think about supplements. I think about deficiencies in terms of wellness in your body, and all that's true. But you mentioned something a minute ago about the soil, and I've never really thought about supplements from this angle, and I think it's fascinating. So tell us why, with soil quality, environmental quality, why you think now is the right time, no matter who you are, for taking Trace.
Right. No. Hey, I think that we have this notion that all I have to do is just eat my fruits and vegetables because that's what mom and dad's always taught me to do, right? But I think if we go a little bit deeper, Todd, right now, I find it interesting. So I just got back from Florida. I picked up a yellow organic pepper. Can you guess where that yellow organic pepper was grown? I think I did this with you too, Maggie, live and in person.
I was told there was going to be no homework for this podcast. However, this is the second question. Let me guess. South America.
How about Israel?
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I have no problem with Israel. Please,
just the distance.
But it's the distance. I picked up an orange. I'm in Florida. I picked up an orange and it's from South Africa. Now everybody says, how do you know that? Well, it's right on the label. I love that as shoppers, we shop by, if it says organic, we just pick and go, right? But I think that we have to do our homework and it's right there. And of course my kids think I'm a little crazy because I keep all these stickers, right? Ultimately, we should be looking at our own gardens, which if you don't have the time, it's like having a third family member or another family. I mean, it's very time consuming and some just don't have the option, right? They live in apartments, but I think that the way I like to explain this is that and here's the hard part for me. I do not want to, cast any shadows on our farmers because heaven knows we need them all, right? More so now. But oftentimes with the fertilizers that we use, NPK, we've been putting on, and that's for mass crops, right? To feed, to grow. But think about this for a minute, Todd. If these minerals aren't in the soil, they're not in our food. If they're not in our food, they're not in our body. If they're not in our body, we call that deficiency. Mm-hmm. Resolve that deficiency, that's called dysfunction, and eventually leads to dis-ease. And it's not until we get into a crisis. And by the way, who walks out the back door or the front door and says, today I'm going to get a horrific diagnosis, right? We don't do that. So when it comes to soil, and remember this is just basic information. You know how long it takes to create, 1/10 of an inch of topsoil?
This is
850 years.
Oh. I'm sorry, I interrupted. How long?
850 years. Now, you'll find that in our textbooks that we're teaching our high schoolers, right? So the information is there. And yet I like to take people to what's called the Senate Document 264. I like to go to an unabridged version, get away from marketers, but this was a piece of information given to our government back in 1936, okay? And I'm not going to ruin the read. It's a very short piece of read. It's probably 11 pages, but it basically states that 99% of our, population were deficient back in 1936 due to agricultural farming techniques. Went on to state that no matter how delicate that deficiency is in our bodies, it will sicken, suffer, and shorten our lives. Now, if that information is true, and that was done how many years ago? 87 years? Where are we today? And I love to point this out to you too, and I did this for Maggie. By the looks of our teeth, by the way, we were designed to pick it, pluck it, dig it, fish it, and if you're extremely fortunate, kill it and drink lots of water. Now, let me soften that a little bit. That's a raw fruit, vegetable, nut, seeds, grain, legume type diet with a little portion of protein and a lot of water. Now, if you really stop to think about what our society is up against today, we cook it and typically overcook it, nuke it, eat it out of a can, a box, a pickup window, concession stand, vending machine. And of course, we don't even have to leave our comforts of our home because now we have Uber, right? Mm-hmm. And we drink no water because there's just way too many options. Do you see how drastic we've come to this point? And it's usually not until it's a crisis in our health that drives us back to this knowledge of taking care of our soil, because again, that's where the foundation begins. And that's where these trace minerals play that huge, we have to supplement. We just have to put it back in because again, think about this. We lose about 2.5 to 3 cups of body fluid a day, whether you like it or not. Okay. That's through respiration, perspiration, urination, and defecation. That's not to mention that time of the month for women and pregnancy, which I think decimates that balance. Now, if that, if we're losing 2.5 to 3 cups of body fluid a day and our output is greater than our input, remember your body has to rob cells, tissues, organs, and eventually the bone just to maintain the homeostasis of our blood. Not to mention that 1/3 of the nutrients that go to the most important healing in the body. And I find it interesting that typically when we hurt ourselves, and only we know when we're healed, right? When we say we usually have one or two other conditions that we didn't have before our injury. And to me, that is a glaring light on our mineral deficiency, especially from a foundational standpoint.
Then we get like caught in a negative cycle too, like magnesium's impacting our resilience and ability to handle stress, but then the stress is impacting our magnesium, right?
Absolutely. And there's the double-edged sword because it's a fine line. So everybody says, and by the way, I love these. I love how we're educating ourselves from a consumer base, especially our younger generations, TikToks, Instagram, YouTube. But I always ask the same question. You show me in nature where you can eat a seed, a nut, a grain, a fruit, a vegetable, or a piece of protein that just has magnesium in it. Right? It doesn't exist. We don't just take an element. It should have that full spectrum and balance. And that's what Trace truly is trying to get out there, is that keep taking your magnesium if you're satisfied, but let's put that foundation, that full spectrum of balance back in and be able to utilize it more efficiently. Because the question that I always get is, can we take too much magnesium? And again, nature is amazing. Our bodies are amazing how it regulates itself. And typically with magnesium, it's kind of like vitamin C. How much vitamin C do we take during the wintertime? Well, we take it to bowel tolerance. Magnesium is no different. Magnesium is one of those amazing elements that I think that right now in our society as a whole, especially with all the digestive disorders that we face, magnesium, a good magnesium bowel flush, I think we'd find our bodies to be healthier, more balanced. I think we think clear, and more importantly, with all the and think about that, by the way, that digestive disorder, these digestive disorders, we used to think that serotonin was produced in the brain. Now we know it's produced in the gut. And 80% of our immune system starts in that gut function. I think that magnesium, remember, every cell in the human body has magnesium within. The one, of course, that and potassium, right? But magnesium, every cell in the human body needs it. We have to supply it.
So let's talk supplements then, because I mean, when you talk about magnesium, there's so many forms. What does Trace offer? Why that form? Why those combinations? Talk us through, like, to help with the confusion of like, okay, magnesium, got it, but
Yep, magnesium. So I think there's some amazing names. Can I say it that way? There's some amazing names promoting different forms of magnesium out there. And it seems like the more popular the A-lister, the more popular the magnesium, right? But I would share with you this, is that if you were to give me my option, our ionic magnesium, I love to promote it in the fact that we do not manufacture it. We harvest it. And I love to state that because when men and women scientists involve their hands in something that Mother Nature, is supposed to provide for us naturally, what do we usually do to it?
Boil it down into
we mess it up some way. But here's my point, is that when I say magnesium glycinate, which is one of the most popular forms of magnesium right now because it's helping aid sleep, right? You won't find magnesium glycinate in our foods. Now, you'll find glycine, which is an amino acid, and you'll see magnesium in some of our foods. But as a society as a whole, as to what we're eating, remember, if we're eating most of our meals from a pickup window or a box or a can, which again, I'm kind of distraught here in the fact that some of our societies, that's all that's available right now, right?
Right.
We have to put that balance back into us at Trace. Even if it's just one drop a day, I believe that with a society as a whole, especially our younger generation that, don't even eat a raw fruit or vegetable in a day, and what they consider a vegetable is a French fry or potato chip, we have to put that foundation back in. And of course, going back to that magnesium, there are so many different forms of magnesium: magnesium glycinate, magnesium carbonate, oxide, uh, taurate. Here's my point. I think that every one of us understands that magnesium is important, but I would ask the question, it's not the magnesium that is important. It's the ability to absorb the magnesium that is the critical part, right? It's what our body does with it. And of course, only you, us, consumer, has to be aware of what it's doing for us to be able to answer that question. And that's where I think that's why I love about Trace's guarantee. Fill the money, or fill the difference or your money back guarantee, no questions to ask, right? And yet the question that I would have is, Todd, what's your body going to do with it? Just like, man, what's your body going to, we're the only ones can answer that question, because I think that our greatest physician is our own well-being, right? Our own intuition. We know us better than anybody. But I think that sometimes we don't take confidence in that. And so when it comes to these different forms of magnesium, please continue to take. But I think that putting that foundation and that full spectrum of minerals into play helps maximize these, elements so that our bodies can utilize them more efficiently.
Great. Let's take a moment and let's zero in on one Trace product. Let's talk about ConcenTrace Mineral Drop, because so you have a personal story that goes along with this product. I wonder if you're willing to, briefly share that and talk a little bit about your experience.
Sure. Everybody always asks, how do you know? How do you know these minerals are absorbable? How do you know they conduct? How do you know they help heal? Well, one of the things that we do, and if I could do this really quick, and it might not be other than for Todd. Todd, you ever seen our light demonstration?
No, I have not.
So the very definition of death, by the way, is not when your heart stops beating, but when all that electrical impulse in your brain ceases. Can you see that conductivity? Mm-hmm. That's alfalfa, the grand master of all land plants. Now, the reason that is because of its root system, right? Reaching deeper than any other land plant, getting to those minerals. Well, if I put that positive negative charge into that, all I'm showing is conductivity. And by the way, I can't break the human body down any more basic than that. That's what we are, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what I love to share is that if I were to take these fruits and vegetables, because again, how often were we told, eat your fruits and vegetables because they're good for us, and yet we still balk because we don't think our parents knew what they were talking about, right? Well, if I take that positive negative charge and put it into a banana, I get an electrical response. How about a potato? How about a piece of celery? How about a pepper? How about an orange? I find these interesting because these oranges are coming from Chile. How about the apple a day that kept the doctor away? Okay, do you see that inconsistency, by the way? Mm-hmm. But all of them conducted something, right? So what I want to do with you really quick is I want to take just one drop of the ConcenTrace, and I'm going to put that one drop. Now, people ask the question, can I just take one drop? And I would if one drop is all you're willing to do a day, by all means, I always say it's better to take a bite of the apple than not to take a bite at all, right? So I'm going to take one drop, and I want to show you what it does. I have to put water in it first. I apologize. This is just tap water from the hotel that I was at just recently, and there's one drop. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, if I put in 2, 3, 4, there's 5 drops. Did you see it get brighter and brighter?
Yeah.
So, with that being said, that right there, my friend, is why I'm so passionate about trace minerals, is that those minerals should have been a part of our health, just like, a cup of water. And by the way, that's one of my pet peeves. We were never designed to live on bottled, filtered, distilled RO water. We were designed to live on groundwater, spring water, creek water, river water. But most of us don't trust our environments, just like we don't trust the waters coming from our taps, because when you take no matter where we travel, I oftentimes smell these waters. I even test them. But here's what I do is I always put my minerals back in so I can control what I'm doing personally. So when you ask about this experience that I had, so I got in a fight with a chainsaw, and I'm not proud of this moment. I'm just not. But I was in a hurry. I put my eye protection, my ear protection, my face, my head shield, but I left my chaps in the garage. And by the way, I just became complacent, right? I'd been wielding this chainsaw on our family property for 18 years up until this moment. Well, this is what took place. And for those that have a queasy stomach, I would not recommend looking at the screen right now. But can you see that?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Okay. So when you can see your own femur, not a good start to the day, right?
Right.
So I had my wife rinse my knee with the ConcenTrace. Now, the reason why I did is I knew that it was conductive. I knew I could communicate with those cells. It's very, brings the oxygen to those tissues. And I knew it was absorbed. We do a little test that's called a TDS meter that tests the dissolved solids, totally dissolved. So I knew it was absorbable. Well, I got to be honest. I told Maggie this. I've never felt that type of pain. You know, that infamous statement, pouring salt into a wound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think about sodium chloride, this is 95% sodium, free. But with all of that concentration of those minerals, that was the worst pain I've ever felt in 55 years of life. I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was going to be sick. And then I moaned and groaned for what felt like 10 hours. Yet 8 days later, my specialist said that I was going to have a bleeding bruise from the top of my knee to my toes, and that my leg would be discolored for months. 8 days later, I have no bruising, not even at the cut line.
Wow.
See.
14 days, I have perfect feeling through my incision. Now, everybody always says, were you just taking it internally? No, I was rubbing it on morning, noon, and night after my surgery, as well as taking it internally. Now, here's where it got interesting for me, is that I think we've all been told something that kind of takes our breath away. And mine is that I'm sorry to inform you, Starkey, you'll probably never walk without a limp, because I'd cut 80% of that patella tendon over the top of my knee. I would never play sports with my children at the level that I always enjoyed. And that I'm going to have a really wide scar, which, of course, women call a C-section scar or a keloid scar, okay? Now, Todd, if I would have listened to that counsel, where do you think I'd be today?
Limping around your house?
Cane. Yep, probably on a cane, standing on the sideline
Right.
with a really wide scar, right? Well, here's what my knee looks like today. So I always share this with people, and the fact that, can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Incredible.
I have no scar, right? I have a faint white line that if you didn't get close to, you would have no idea I created such carnage with a chainsaw. Now, here's my question I always ask, and I asked Maggie the same question. Am I worried about either one of you going out and getting in a fight with a chainsaw, or any listener? And the answer to that is no, I'm not. But this chainsaw of life that we're involved with every single day, whether that be family, whether that be our business life, whether that be just general society today, I think is more damaging to our internal well-being than a physical chainsaw wound is to our being. But if I can do that with my machine, my body, what are you capable of doing with your body with that same balance without a chainsaw accident or with that? And to me, that is the greatest. I share this all the time, Todd. I love to state that these minerals are the cure to nothing, but they are involved in every aspect of your existence. Every cell, every tissue, every organ, every ounce of your bone has these elements involved, and we are the ones that should be putting it. We have to supplement them back. Because until we start focusing on soil building as a part of our human building and well-being, how long do we have to supplement with a product like that? And that to me is and my greatest passion, by the way, is teaching low-income households that can't afford an organic diet to begin with, but can't not afford to put that balance back into them and their growing, family members by pennies on the dollar, literally pennies on the dollar.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, what a testimonial! Like I said, the first time you told me that we were at a trade show, and I was just floored seeing all those images and the impact. And yeah, it definitely helps illustrate. But I want to switch gears just a little bit because you were talking earlier about like people spending more money on their cars than themselves. The other thing that we love to spend money on is our pets, right? Like spoiling them like crazy. Right. And you guys just released a pet line too, but also with some magnesium products in there, right? Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So all of those products have this in common, right? All of them have those trace minerals. So that's our niche, by the way. This is our niche. This is our hero product. This is what's kept us in business for 50 years. It's that foundational piece so that when we put this into, again, whether it be hair, skin, and nails, whether it be stress, whether it be, female formulas, pet formulas, this is that product that makes it unique. So when we put this, what I find interesting, and for years, I've been with the company for 33 years. And one of the things I found most fascinating in my journey with the company is that when pet lovers would call up, and I'm not a veterinarian, they would share with me, or even plant lovers, they would call me up and say, how is this possible? How is it that I was recommended this from my health food store owner or manager or staff to help with Fifi, and now all of a sudden Fifi is acting like a kitten. How is that possible? All I can say is deficiency, right? Because of what's being placed in these commercial foods, mass produced, I think that putting that foundation back to give them their bodies what they need. And when you see the results, what I find interesting is that these pet lovers who typically take better care of their pets than they do themselves. I wished I had a diet like many of these pet lovers give their pets. But at the same time, when they see the results with their pets, guess who becomes a believer? And they start to take it. So that's the funny thing. It's manufactured for for humanity, but they call and find out because it works so well with their pets, can they take it too? Well, of course you can take it. That was the whole design of it to begin with, is for you. Right. But because you see that result with your pet, by all means, keep taking it personally and taking care of your pet. Because then I ask the question, can you imagine if your health goes sideways, who's going to take care of your pet the way you do? Mm-hmm. And that gets them thinking, right? I've got to take care of me first. Then I can take care of my pet and continue to do so. I think the same is said for parents. Sometimes our parents take better care of every family member except the one in the mirror. And we have to start taking care of the one in the mirror first so that we can be there for our family. So I think that with what we're up against as a society, the pulls on our emotions and feelings and health and well-being, I think that, again, foundation.
Those are great points. In the last few minutes here, let's talk sustainability, because you have a fascinating connection with the Great Salt Lake when it comes to the sustainability of your product. And
we do.
Such an important resource in general. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to Trace?
So we literally have a whole department that literally their whole goal is to keep our footprint as small as possible. Yet at the same time, what I love to share about this particular body of water is that there's only two bodies of water that are typically compared to, and that's the Dead Sea and the Great Salt Lake. And the reason why they're compared is that they're called terminal lakes. They're terminal in the fact that there's all these inlets, but there's no outlets. It's literally terminal, right? So if it wasn't for the inlets, again, so here's what I love to share with people is that, and again, please verify this, do some fact checking, okay? So when it comes to the Dead Sea, I just know it's very deep. Some say it's bottomless, which I don't know what that means. All I know is it's very deep. Yet the average depth of the Great Salt Lake, and by the way, these are large bodies of water, right?
Yeah.
The Great Salt Lake in length is 75 miles from north to south. It's 35 miles from east to west. But what I find interesting about the Great Salt Lake is it is very shallow. The average depth of the Great Salt Lake is 14 feet deep. The deepest point is a trench that is about 40 feet deep. So it's a very shallow body of water. So what happens is that as the sun beats down on it naturally, that evaporation of that water begins. So the Great Salt Lake is about 10 times six to 10 times. We'll give it maximum 10 times the concentration of our regular oceans around us. But when we're done with this product, remember, we do not use any chemicals, additives, preservatives, any man-made. We use the sun to finish our product. And by doing so, that final product is about 17 times the concentration with the sodium removed as compared to the very, bodies of water around us. So with that being said, it's that full spectrum and balance of those minerals that we should have found within our foods, our water, but in the same time, now we have to supplement, and that's what makes that body of water so unique, is that it's so concentrated in these minerals. Now, I do have a hard time with carbon dating, by the way, Todd. When these individuals say, well, I love the product, how do I know it's going to be here for my grandchildren? And that's a great question. It really is. But what I love is when these scientists tell me that this body of water has been there for hundreds of thousands of years. What that means to me is that it's been there long before all of us were thought of. It will be there long after we're forgotten. But we are, at this point in time, especially with the team that we have, we take a great honor in protecting that right to that water.
Excellent.
Because it comes down to foundation, and ultimately we have to protect our environment.
Absolutely, yeah. Such great info, and I wanted to point out before we totally wrap up that for people who have known your company for decades, may notice that we've been saying Trace the whole time and not Trace Minerals. And that's because you guys just went through a great rebrand, and you can read more about it. Everybody out there on Whole Foods Magazine, we reported on some of the changes. But I think what's so great is, you're delivering these products that are helping the consumer achieve wellness and their pets achieve wellness. And but with the rebrand, you're really focusing on that sustainability story and the packaging and delivering everything that the consumers want for, in terms of the whole package for people on the planet. So I love what you guys are doing.
We appreciate that. We have this goal to remineralize the world, which again, some say, well, that's isn't that bold to state? But even if it's just one drop in one individual at a time, that's enough. Mm-hmm. Because when we have an experience, and it's more importantly, that's what I love when we do these conventions, is that if we can just change one thought process of one individual that has an experience for themselves, and they can say, I felt the difference. To me, that's the victory, is that they're going to share it with their family and their friends and anybody that's willing to listen, because that's what we do. Yet what we find interesting is that if you're not happy with the product, that individual is probably going to tell 100 individuals why they're unhappy.
Yeah.
But the individual that has a really good experience, a life-changing experience, might share it with 25 people. So the odds are against us. But what I love to state is that with that guarantee that we do offer, and we hope that the consumer, the listener, the viewer will take that challenge to experience it. And by the way, the number one complaint behind this product, I just have to bring it up, number one complaint is taste. Mm. But if you dilute it properly, you can put it into water, soups, teas, protein shakes, smoothies. I don't care how you get it in. But as long as you dilute it properly, that finicky individual in our lives that we all know, the one, should never taste it. That's the perfect way to take it. But when they have an experience with it, that experience can be health changing, which we believe will affect, the ones most important to them. And that's how that's how we've stayed in business for 50 years.
It's great.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Dr. Starkey, always great to speak with you. Thank you for getting us up to speed on all things magnesium, helping us see the big picture. We really appreciate it. Thank you.